you're in the right room. If you're here in the right room, because Bob and I were in the wrong room. So we'd love to have you here. Oh, I don't have my book. I gotta go grab my book. BK, you got a copy of the book?
Of course, I have a copy of the book.
Okay, mine's in the other room. So anyway, this is the Selling Buildings Book Club. This is session 2. We're going to there you go. Hey, everyone who's on this call right now, let me know. Let's Bob know a couple things. Just the city you're calling in from and the number of years you've been in commercial real estate. Just let us know. Just everyone in the chat box, 125 of you. So let's know city you're calling in from and how long you've been in commercial real estate. Let's go. Okay. Atlanta, Greenville, Miami, Los Angeles, Morganville. I know where that is. New Jersey. You know where Morganville is, Bob.
Of course.
Calling from the gym in Alberta. Thanks, CD. Hey, Chris. Calling from the gym. New York, Columbus, Westchester, Chicago. Awesome. San Francisco. Wow, we got the whole country is represented, BK, on this one. Baton Rouge. Way to go.
I know, and I see Miss Moneypenny is on, so I'm very, very excited.
Oh, cheese and crackers. A little James Bond
I
reference.
feel like James Bond, that's right. Hello, Miss Moneypenny.
Hello, Miss Moneypenny. Okay. Hey, everyone, now tell us, say yes or no, and be honest. Be honest, yes or no. Have you bought the book? Just say yes or no. And it is what it is. We're not going to spank anybody, except for the people who said no. How can you not have bought this book, folks? This book is the #1 rated commercial real estate investment book in the country. It keeps on selling out and selling out and selling out. And the good news is right now, there are copies available on Amazon.com for Prime delivery, which hasn't been in weeks. So if you haven't bought this book, you need to buy this book. This book is getting such amazing feedback and ratings. This book is absolutely phenomenal because it's BK's story. And BK, folks, BK is the freaking GOAT. Yes, Bob, I said freaking. The freaking GOAT of commercial real estate brokerage. And he knows a hell of a lot about investment. So please, Kindle's not yet, Kindle will come out till later. The audiobook will come out later as well. We got to sell our hard copies first, frankly. Okay, now before we get started, I got to tell you all this. Please mark in your calendar right now. BK and I are going to be there. Mark on your calendars, everyone, November 19th. November 19th. Just block it off the entire day. We're going to do something that's never been done in the history of commercial real estate brokerage. It's going to be amazing when you see what we're going to do. We're going global, folks. We're going global on November 19th. And you can sit in your house, you can sit in your car, and Chris, you can sit in the gym, or you can sit in your office, and you can join us on November 19th. Don't do anything. Mark it in your calendar right now. And we're going to take off. Okay. So again, thanks everyone for being here. Gotta buy the book. And when you get started, now look, ask your questions in the chat box. I'll get them to BK. BK and I are going to talk about chapter 2 in the book, which is really learning the business. I guess we call it. Is that right? Learning the business, BK? I'm learning the business. I think that's it. Learning the business. So here's what we're going to do. Okay. So welcome to the book club. Welcome to chapter 2. My name is Rod Santomassimo. For those who may not know me, I'm the co-author of the book. I run a company called the Massimo Group. We are the #1 coaching organization in the world for commercial real estate brokers. And today we're rolling back the clock. We're going back to 1984. Cheese and crackers, Bob. 1984, I was a junior in college. 1984. And when this 22-year-old Wharton graduate who only had 2 suits and shined his shoes every day when he got off to go to the bus and then in New Jersey. And then on July 16th, I believe, 1984, Bob started his commercial real estate career and unknowingly began to rewrite the rules of mid-market building sales. He did. So in this chapter, Learning the Business, Bob is going to show how, for example, some low probability crappy assignments became 6 closings, right? And in just 18 months of starting. Let me repeat that. 6 closings within 18 months of starting. How he create the territory system. BK and his partner create the territory system. How they create this client first focus, which still is one of his key principles today. So we're going to dig into things like what's luck versus disciplined, how he became an accidental broker. And more importantly, you're all going to understand when half days equal 12 hours. That's what it means. So, BK, welcome to the book club. Great to have you.
Great to be here, Rod, and hello everybody out there. Thanks for joining. And this writing this book was kind of labor of love for Rod and I, wanting to share the good, the bad, and the ugly of how we got here today. And to the extent that you get anything out of it that helps you in your careers, then that's a great reward for Rod and I. So that's what we're doing here today, is hopefully give you some tips that can help you do a better job in your day-to-day career and make more money, have more fun, and be happier.
So, look, we're going to be together for an hour. We're going to go through chapter 2 in the book. I'm going to ask Bob to expand on some of the things we shared. And then, yeah, you have questions, throw them in the chat box. I will get to them and we'll get you the answers you want. So, BK, look, I know you told me, you want to be Gordon Gekko. You want to be the Wall Street king. That was your goal. But you made a switch to commercial real estate. Why did you go from this dream of being a banker, right, on Wall Street versus a broker in New York? Why?
No choice, no choice. So I have to take you back to 1981, my freshman year at Wharton. And just like every other Wharton kid at the time, I wanted to be the next Gordon Gekko or Michael Milken or Ivan Boesky and, take over Wall Street. And I thought it would be great to get a summer job between freshman and sophomore year that would look good on my resume, working at Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley. And so I grew up in northern New Jersey in Bergen County. And spring break, I put a little resume together and drive around Bergen County, dropping the resume off at every commercial bank and investment bank I saw. And I'm in Hackensack, New Jersey, coming out of a Payne Weber office. And across the hall, I see this big sign that says Coldwell Banker. And I'm like, oh, great, another bank. Let me go in, give them my resume. I dropped my resume off. Later that day, they called me. I set up an interview for the following day, still not realizing it was a real estate company. But this was 1981 again. There's no internet. So I go to the library the next morning to find out a little bit about this bank. And I see it's a real estate company. I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to go work in real estate. But they were the only ones that were hiring college kids for the summer. Took the job, loved it. Wasn't exact 100% sold on. I knew I really, really enjoyed it. It was a great office, a lot of hardworking young people, seemed very happy, making a lot of money. It was exciting what was going on every day. And then I had my first semester sophomore year, I took an entrepreneurial management course, and we had a guest speaker come in. He said, guys, I know I was sitting in your seat 25 years ago, and I know you're all thinking you want to go on Wall Street and make a lot of money. Well, let me tell you something. Don't pick a career that you think you can make a lot of money in. Pick a career that you love, and that will enable you to get to the top of the field. And if you get to the top of anything in business, you're going to make a lot of money. So pick something you love. He says, I sell dog food, and I am the happiest guy I know. I love what I do. I'm in pet supplies and dog food and all this other stuff. And he said, I wanted to be an investment banker, but I'm in the pet food and pet supply business. I love it. I'm so happy. Find what you love in life and follow that path. And I'm telling you that one class, that one day that thankfully I didn't sleep in and blow the class off like I used to do too often. I went to that class and changed my life because I said, you know what, I really like this real estate stuff. Forget about investment banking. And then I started to take every real estate class that Wharton offered, which back in those days was only about 6 or 7. Today I think there's 30 or 40. But I went back to CB. My first summer, I was in the market research department, enhancing what they called their data bank, driving around Morris County, logging information on every commercial building I saw, whether it was a retail property, office building, industrial building, what have you. My next summer, I went back and I ran that summer program. And then my third summer, I got my New Jersey salesperson's license, and I was an assistant or what was called a runner back in those days, for a guy named Tom Mullaney, who was an industrial broker in Morris County, and I was showing industrial space.
Okay,
Uh,
BK, because of time and the questions, I'm gonna cut you off here. Okay, so you
yeah,
answered that question, but I want to talk about your first deal, right? Because we in the book you talk about luck versus discipline. So you got a deal, the crappy deal. Tell us about in concise. Give us the crappy
yeah, no,
deal.
well, first of all, my value proposition for 41 years has been very simple. I only sell buildings, I only do seller rep, I only work on exclusives, I only sell stuff in New York. That came about because that first deal was, came in through the company. It was a buyer rep assignment representing a medical company. It's called American Medical International. They wanted to put the first MRI facility in New York. We meet with them. Paul and I end up selling the building to them up at 1421 Third Avenue. It couldn't have been on Lex because the magnetic pull from the subway trains would have thrown the machine off. So we had to be at least 500 feet away from a subway, or all this other crazy stuff. And we realized that doing that buyer rep deal, which is one of the two buyer rep deals, I just recently closed deal 2,351. 2,349 of them, I've exclusively represented the seller. That first deal was a buyer rep deal, and we realized that it was such a stroke of luck that that deal happened. We said, we're never doing a buyer rep deal again. And that's one of the things that had us focus on doing seller rep only, was that we realized it was such an unbelievably lucky thing that we sold that first building.
So why is your value proposition? And I repeat your three tiers. What's the value to you? Is it a control issue? What is it?
I just, as a personal preference, and look, I'm sharing with you what works for me. There are plenty of people in our business that do different things and are very, very successful. You can represent buyers, you can do any number of things. But I just said that I believe buyer representation is very low probability business. And the reason I think that is because, look, let's face it, the overwhelming majority of sellers believe their property is worth more than it is. By the time the market educates them and they get down to the point where they're willing to transact at the market level, there are always 3 or 4 buyers that would pay that price. So you could be a buyer rep broker and represent one of those 4 buyers. You've done as good a job as anybody else and still only have a 25% chance of making a commission. Whereas if you're representing the seller and they're motivated, very likely you're going to make a commission. So it was just, I really believe that so much of what we do in our world is probability based. And I just wanted to increase the probability that I'd make money. And I thought seller rep was the way to do that.
So for all you out there, if you're brokers, if you're investors, it's different. But for those of you the brokers, the homework for you, from my perspective, is go through your pipeline and give probabilities. Are they low probability opportunities? Are they high probability opportunities? We do this at Massimo. We rate all opportunities for our clients so they know what they're working on. I don't believe in low probability brokerage. You only have so much time, as Bob will preach. We do. So let's work on high probability opportunities. So I would challenge you all to go through your pipeline later today and rate your opportunities high, low, and make some decisions on how you want to spend your time. Okay,
Yeah, and
BK.
Brad, I want to just add to that quickly. So many times we preach specialization, and I think specialization is so important. And a lot of times, folks will come to me and say, "Hey, BK, this guy wants me to rent their apartments. I could make money doing this." Or, "Hey, they want me to try to get them a mortgage. I can make money doing this." And I say, "You know what? You could go buy some cocaine and sell it on the corner and make some money too. Is that what you want to do?" It's not about making money. It's about taking every second of the day that you're going to spend working and using that as an activity that's going to be accretive towards you getting the next one. If you're doing a bunch of random things, that being successful at one doesn't necessarily help you get the next one. But if you're narrowly focused, then every single thing you're doing is making it easier to get the next one, which is why specialization is so important.
So true, so true. So let's talk about this. You and Paul got together, and it's funny. I just read I got a preview of someone else's book that you and I know that's coming out later this year, and he talked about how his partnership was the worst thing that ever happened, and then he was happy he got out of it. But you and your partner Paul Massey were together for 26 plus years, and you split everything 50-50 initially. What made that partnership work versus some partnerships that fail? So what was so great about what? Tell us about that.
My partnership with Paul, I will say, was complete serendipity, complete luck. I show up my first day on the job, and the boss says to me, "Hey, this guy Paul Massey just got out of a training program. Follow him around. He'll show you where the coffee machine is, that kind of stuff." And at the time, CB had about 50, 60 office leasing brokers, about 20 brokers in the retail leasing department. And there were 4 people in investment sales, 3 of whom had 20 years of experience, and then Paul, who just got out of a training program. And I'm hanging out with him the first day. Second day, we're having lunch together, and we're like, "Hey, these guys with 20 years of experience don't seem to be paying much attention to us. Let's just work together, split everything 50-50, see how it goes." And that literally was the start of a 30-year partnership, because we were partners for 4 years at CB before we started Massey Knakal. Massey Knakal was 26 years. But I will tell you, the thing that made the partnership work was that we had an identical work ethic. And I think over the 30 years, if you added up all the time that I spent working and all the time that Paul spent working, there's probably less than a 10-hour difference. And I think that was so important, particularly in the bad times, because in the bad times, like, if you're working your butt off and your partner's not, that's not going to last. There's going to be resentment there. And, whether your skill sets are complementary or identical. I mean, at the beginning, the first 10 years or so, Paul and I did everything together. We interviewed people. We did pitches together. We went on meetings together. We painted the office together. We took the garbage out together. We did all that stuff. And then over time, we started to gravitate towards different parts of the business. Paul really liked running the business. I hated management. I just liked to sell. But the thing that, through good times and bad, and particularly in bad times, the thing that kept the partnership strong was that we had an identical work ethic, and we both knew that we were all in all the time. And that I think that's the number one reason why I see partnerships don't work, is because people feel like they're putting in more effort than the other person, and that's the kiss of death for a partnership.
I would agree. And for all of you out there that are looking for partners, Paul was the yin to Bob's yang. It absolutely was serendipitous. It was. On our end, we see that partners, if you have 2 hard charging originators, who's going to service the business? You got to figure that out. Maybe a team member, but you got to make sure you align with your talents and natural behaviors. I know that sounds a little deep, but it's true. To make sure you have the right partners. For example, I just hired a chief of staff, and she is much less social than I am as far as extrovert, introvert, but she's the yin to my yang. We work really well together, right? That's what you want. So BK, when you and Paul got together, you decided to do this geographic micro focus. It later became the territory system. But initially, why the micro focus?
Well, the company kind of preached having an area of specialization. And we thought, we're 2 young kids that just came into the city, didn't know anything. I have a funny story. One of the first people I cold called was Louis Brous, who owned a building at 52 Vanderbilt Avenue. If you know the city at all, Vanderbilt Avenue is a relatively short street, but it's right next to Grand Central Terminal, about as center of Manhattan as you can get. And I called him up and said, "Hey, Mr. Brous, I'd love to come over and talk to you about what we're doing over here at CB." And he said, "Sure, come over to my office." I said, "Where's your office?" He said, 52 Vanderbilt Avenue. And I said, "Vanderbilt Avenue, where's that?" I said, "You're in commercial real estate? You don't know where Vanderbilt Avenue is?" he still met with me and actually turned out to be a good friend and a mentor to us. But the reason we did the geographic territory.
Wait, no, hold on. I've been working with Bob for what, 12 years now? That's the first time I heard that story. First time.
Yeah, no, it's a true story. True story. And he turned out to be a great friend. David's Lou's son, David, is a good friend now. Yeah, so we didn't know anything about the city. So like, how are we going to get our arms around this thing? I mean, there are 176,000 investment properties in New York City. That's just in four boroughs.
Stop. Repeat that number.
176,000.
Do you all know how many tenants are in your market? Do you all know how many properties are in your market? If you don't, you're a commodity broker. Sorry, you are, right? Don't be that. Know your market. BK, go ahead.
Yeah, so we originally said, all right, we're going to work on the Upper East Side. And we originally started to catalog. Catalog means take a picture of every building, get the little tax map, create a catalog of 3-ring binders to call owners. And we did the whole Upper East Side from 55th Street up to 96th Street. And it became very apparent that that was way too big. So we shortened it, made it much smaller, ended up being our initial territories were 55th Street to 63rd Street. Paul worked from 5th Avenue over to Lex. I worked from Lex to First. And our idea was to go start at the southwest corner of the block and go north and east and south and west and call every owner on every block and then go to the next block. And we did, initially, we studied 3 years of comparable sales in the area, got to know all the market data, what the new developments were, everything, the zoning changes. We knew everything that was happening in the area. So early on, we got hired to sell a few buildings, and our competitive advantage was that we'd go into an owner and say, yeah, we've only been in the business a couple of years. I've only sold a few buildings, and you're interviewing people who have been around for a lot longer, sold a lot more properties. However, we did sell the property down the street, the one across the street from you, and the building right next door. And we know more about this neighborhood than anybody. Look at our market report. And because we know so much about this area, we can be a better advocate for you to convince buyers to pay more for your property. And that resonated with people. And so that's how, as a couple of young kids, we started to get really good traction getting listings. It was based on the very granular market data that we had. And we used that to our advantage. It allowed us to easily differentiate ourselves from others. And that differentiation led to a competitive advantage. And I think proprietary data can do that. Today, I have a lot of young folks around the country that interact with me through social media now. And the number one question they always ask is, hey, I've just been in the business 2 or 3 years. I have people competing with me that have been here for 20 years, 30 years. How can I possibly compete with them? I say, it's easy. I said, what do you do? A kid from Kansas City called. He says, I sell apartment buildings in Kansas City. I say, okay, how many buildings are in your market?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I said, okay, first thing you do as soon as we get off this call, go get a map, draw a line around what you think the outskirts of Kansas City are. Count every building. How many are elevated? How many are walk up? How many of each type are there? Who owns them? Who owns the most buildings? Who owns the most units? What has the sale history been for the past 3 years? I said, go do that analysis. And then I guarantee you go into an owner and say, hey, I sell apartment buildings in Kansas City. There are 1,243 of them. Last year, 262 sold. The year before that, and you go through all this litany and what the prices per foot were and the prices per unit and the cap rates and everything else. I said, I guarantee the people with 20, 30 years of experience have no idea what those numbers are. They may know approximate value. They may know this, that, but they're not going to get as granular as that. That's a tremendous competitive advantage. So you're relatively new in a market, new in a particular specialty. You want to compete with people that have been around a lot longer. To me, that's the easiest way to do it. If you called up an owner of an apartment building in Kansas City and said, hey, I've done a study of apartment building sales in Kansas City for the last 3 years. I have all the data. I know all the buildings. I can show you everything. What owner is not going to want to meet with that person?
I completely agree. And folks, don't excuse yourself and say, well, I don't sell buildings. I lease. I lease. I'm a tenant rep. I don't care what you do. If you don't know the market for your specialty and your focus, you're a commodity broker. You're average. That's the fact. You bring nothing to the table. So you have to understand the data. Now, BK, have you ever had a CoStar account? I don't think so.
No.
No. So, and look, I'm not in any way depreciating the value of CoStar. I'm not. What I'm saying is, MeStar, you knowing your data, you all can do this, is more valuable than third-party data. It just is.
No, I wanted to, I mean, a point on that third-party data, right? I was shocked that at Oldco had brokers with many years of experience that went into pitches with a report printed, downloaded from a third-party information aggregator. Do you know that a fifth grader could pull the same report? Are you telling me that you're a fifth grader? Come on. You have to have proprietary information. You're dealing with principals all day long. You have access to information. Yes, it takes hard work, it takes focus, it takes discipline, but you have the ability to create a data set that nobody else has. That's a beautiful thing. I've said numerous times that over the course of my career, I've given over 10,000 pitches. I've won 26% of my pitches. But in my map room, which is
we're getting way ahead of the book. We're still in chapter 2. You're learning the business.
I'm just saying,
learning the business.
Proprietary data will set you apart. And proprietary data at the beginning, doing all of our research was the thing that got us up the curve much more significantly.
So someone asked Bob, and I'll take it first and have you go. So how do you get proprietary data? A couple ways. Number one, you walk around and look at things. You walk buildings. You see what tenant signs there are. You go to your resources that you have to figure out who the owners are. You make the calls. You talk to the people. The late great Ralph Spencer used to say, "See the people, see the properties." That was it. STP, right? That was it. See the people, see the properties. You gotta go out and get your head out of your computer and go talk to people and see what's going on. So BK, how would you add to that for getting primary information?
Well, again, in sales, and that's the business I know, call the buyer and seller of every transaction. I guess in New York it's easy because all transactions are recorded and it's publicly available. I know some places like in Texas, you don't have that kind of thing. But that even I think creates a better environment in which to create that data because it's even more valuable because less people have access to it. But I call the buyer and seller of every land transaction in New York and I say, hey, okay, what was the tenancy? Do you have to buy tenants out? Did you have bonus rights? Did you have easements? Did you have to pay anything extra? Was there an environmental problem? You need to know all these things. I use as an example, I sold a development site on the Upper East Side a couple of years ago for $77 million. And in New York, it's a completely entitled zoning jurisdiction. So you know what the density is, what the buildable footage is. So you simply take the sale price, divide it by the buildable density, you get the price per buildable foot, which is the metric that you evaluate land on. So the whole market saw this was a $77 million transaction. However, because I was the broker on the deal, I knew that $3.5 million was paid for a light and air easement to a neighbor. I knew $1.5 million was paid for a first right of refusal on 2 adjacent buildings. And I knew that $10 million was paid to 2 rent stabilized tenants to get them out of the building. So what looked like a $77 million transaction was actually a $92 million transaction. And so when other brokers went in and said, hey, this deal sold for $350 a foot, I said, no, it sold for $428 a foot, and here's why. How bad does the other broker look, and how good do I look in that scenario? So I call the buyer and seller of every transaction to get the details on what really made that transaction tick.
Love it. Okay, BK, let's talk about the first exclusive. You got the first opportunity for the buy side, but you're not a buy side broker, and the 2 deals of your 53-51. And for those that can't do the math, if you do 2351. I said, sorry, 23. If you sell 2,351 buildings in 41 years, that means you sold everyone understand this, you sold more than one building a week in your entire career. One building a week in your entire career. That's just astronomical. So BK, let's talk about the first one though, the first exclusive. So I know it was a lot of going back and forth, a lot of calls to get the first meeting, a lot of meetings to get the first listing. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, first building, I remember it very clearly because I probably showed it 200 times. But it was 115 East 55th Street. It was a little four-story, 4,000 square foot commercial townhouse owned by a guy named John Coleman, who owned and operated several Ritz-Carlton hotels. It was like his little headquarters building. Great location, north side of 55th between Park and Lex. And, we said he wanted to sell. Paul and I went over and met with him. Hey, guys, you haven't sold any buildings yet. Why would I hire you? Well, we know the market really well. Went through the market report. We met with him probably 8 or 9 times before he hired us. Each time we went, got our shoes shined, so we made a good impression. He always dressed impeccably. And so we wanted to, we shined our shoes, went over, met with him. We begged him. We said, look, we'll work harder for you than we don't have anything else to work on. You're going to be our only client. Come on, give us a shot. Give us a shot. We basically begged this guy. And finally, after the 8 or 9 times, he said, all right, I'll give you guys a shot. And so he hired us and we sold the building. And we had to work really hard for that first one. But, when you have no track record, you have to beg.
Okay, now you did something different when you started out. You would actually put signs. This is 1985, 86, right? So you would actually put signs on buildings, which was unheard of, right? That was a residential thing to do. No one did that. Why? Why did you do that? What do you think about that?
Well, when we decided that we were going to do seller rep only, we said, look, the best thing we can do for our clients is maximize the exposure that the property is going to get. The more people that know it's for sale, the more eyeballs that look at this thing, the more interest we're going to get. The more interest we get, the more offers we get. The more offers we get, the more likely it is we're going to get a very high price. So we want to do anything and everything we can to get exposure. And back in those days, a lot of people put up for rent signs for stores, maybe a for rent sign for office space. Very few people put for sale signs up. And I remember we put a sign up on that 55th Street building for sale. And I remember I got a call like the day the sign went up from a guy named Dan Abramson from ABC Realty. And he was a buyer of properties. He called it, hey, Bob, I saw your sign on the 55th Street building. I want to buy the building, but you got to go get that sign down right now. I said, why? Why would it take the sign down? He says, because I want to buy the building. I don't want everybody to know it's for sale. The price is going to get too high. And we said, aha, this makes sense. This is what we want to do. So we did that. We also sent out a broker mailing. We said, hey, we don't know every buyer in town. In fact, we don't know many buyers in town at this point. Let's go to the brokerage community and cooperate with them. We sent out a broker mailing, and I remember we got several calls. And the mailings, that was real mail, like U.S. postal mail.
Yeah, right. Hard mail, physical mail.
Hard mail. And got several brokers call up, say, hey, you're willing to work with us on this? Then absolutely. We'll split the fee 50-50. And brokers were shocked that that was not really common practice back in those days. So that was the way we felt you needed to maximize the exposure for the seller, and that would lead to a higher price.
Hey, BK, someone just asked, what's the name of our book?
Selling buildings. What
selling
else?
buildings. Selling
What else?
buildings. So it's available on Amazon. Because Bob's first name is first, it would be under his name. So selling buildings. Thanks, guys. Okay. So Bob, let's go that because that's 40 years ago. So let's go to now. I mean, you have all the data. You know all the buyers, all the investors, at least you know majority of them. Then why still cooperate with brokers?
Look, because nobody knows everything. Nobody knows everything. And I know a lot of people here. I don't know everybody, and nobody can claim they know everybody. So look, if you are of the opinion that you really want to do the best job for your client, you have to do anything and everything possible to get a buyer any way you can. And always been completely agnostic as to who the buyer is. Couldn't care less as long as they'll pay more than anybody else. And I have several clients over the years that have said to me, Bob, you know what? I'm never, ever going to buy a property from you. But if I ever sell, you'll be my first call. And you know what? You can't be all things to all people. You have to decide what you're going to be. And I said, you know what? I'm going to represent sellers. If I'm representing sellers, I have to do anything and everything to get them the highest price, maximize the exposure, do signs, do advertising, do mailings, do broker cooperation, do things that are going to be in the best interest of my client. And
Okay, everyone in the chat box right now, see if you got the reason why. People are telling Bob, I'll never buy a building that you list. Why are they telling him that? See if you can figure it out. Everyone in the chat box, why are they telling Bob, I'll never buy a building that you list? Why is that? That's right. because Bob's listing is get maximum price. And that's what we talk about in the book, how you can get maximum price for your properties. It's in the book, right? So buy the book. I'm just gonna tell you, buy the book. So Bob, that was awesome. Awesome. Okay, we got a bunch of questions, and folks, ask your questions because I want to get through this. But Bob, think back before we get to the rapid fire questions I'm going to ask you. Let's think about those early years with Paul when you're just learning the business. What was the greatest memory from that era for you?
well, probably that first closing. I remember walking back to the office. I felt like my feet didn't touch the ground. I did have it. It sounds like, the old, I walked uphill to and from school, both ways uphill. But literally, I had 2 suits when I started, 5 permanent press shirts that I put in the washing machine every weekend and hung on the line to dry. And I remember my first commission on that 1421 third deal was $12,500. I felt like I was the richest guy in New York City. Went out, bought another suit, bought a couple of shirts that actually I could take to the dry cleaner, and that was a great early memory. And in fact, during that closing, there wasn't enough room in the closing room for Paul and I to go into the room, so we were in the reception area, and I remember flipping a penny as I was sitting there, and actually ended up keeping that as the lucky penny, which has been taped to every one of my desks since then, and is taped to my desk now. And there's a lot of great memories back in the day. But what's interesting is if you follow me on social media, I tell a lot of deal stories. And it's now 12:41 on the East Coast. I don't remember what I had for breakfast, but ask me about a deal from 1988. I'll probably give you very, very intimate details about it, because these things are all so important. You hang on every little aspect of everything because it's so impactful to you personally. And I just love remembering. That was one of the really neat things about writing this book was taking that walk down memory lane and remembering so much of the stuff. And I was fortunate that I kept a lot of stuff. I have 22 boxes of old reports and articles and photos and all kinds of stuff that help bring back the memories, all of which you can see on bobknakal.com if you go there. Thousands of pages of scans of all this stuff that were in those boxes. But those boxes helped with the recollection of stories that we recount in the book.
Okay, so and look, we're not going to go into the story, but one thing Bob didn't mention was, we're not going to go into it right now, that on that first closing he had, the day before the closing, the building he was selling caught fire. So you have to read about it in the book. It's just a thing. These are things that happen in real estate. You got to figure out how to get over those obstacles. So yeah, that's true. Does Bob still? Bob, quick question, yes or no? Do you still have your first suit?
No.
No, Michael, he doesn't. Hey, some of these questions are like on chapter 6, 7, and 8. We're not going to get to those questions regarding those chapters. We're talking about right now the early years. So, but I will answer. We will get to a lot of your questions you're asking. Absolutely. So, Bob, I'm going to do some rapid fire questions. So, as short as you can, answer these questions. You ready?
Yes.
What is your daily prospecting KPI metric? What is it for you?
I don't have a daily one, but I have a weekly one. My goal is to connect with 100 owners a week and get around to asking them if there's anything they want to sell.
Not is that calling 100 owners or
No,
speaking
that's
to?
connecting, talking to, and not only talking to them, but asking them if there's anything in their portfolio they want to sell. If I talk to somebody for 2 hours and don't ask them that question, that doesn't count as a prospecting call for me.
So the people are freaking out now, going, "Wait a minute, I can't make 100 calls a week, right?" So when you think about it, is there a standard? I know the number. Is there a standard when you talk to 100 people? Do you know how many dials you generally have to make to talk to those people?
Don't know, couldn't care. I
That's
think
it. I don't
it's
care.
it's a metric. It's a metric to track effort, but effort is good, but effort doesn't mean anything. Effort's not going to put money in the bank. You have to have production, and production is connecting with people. I rather have somebody here make 8 dials and speak to 7 people than make 1,000 dials and talk to 4 people.
Right. Right. So it's all in the connection. I love the mentality. Okay. Hardest lesson from your earliest failure. Your hardest lesson from your earliest failure in those early years.
Um, I think the failures were numerous. We made a lot of mistakes, and I think the big lesson was that we did everything by trial and error. We thought we knew everything. We didn't think to go ask more experienced people for advice. And so, unfortunately, a lot of the lessons that we learned were forced upon us by making mistakes and then having to retrench, regroup, and try to do it differently. So I think as a young person, the best thing you can do is speak to people who have been around for a long time and ask them, hey, how do you do this? Why do you do it that way? How did that work out? And try to benefit from their experience. I think had we done that later in life, and we'll get into this in other chapters as well, we had an advisory board where we asked people for help and guidance. But that was probably the biggest mistake early on, was not asking for help and guidance from people who had more experience.
Your favorite discipline hack.
Disciplined hack. Well, I think that it's a realization of how powerful we are, right? I always say when you hear me talk about discipline, I don't say, oh, you have to have discipline. You have to, people have discipline. You don't have discipline. You use discipline. Discipline is a tool. Every single person, there are 158 people on this call today. We all have access to the same exact amount of discipline, but we all choose to use that discipline differently. And if you choose to use it well, which is really important, then you get great results. I always say 3 characteristics that top brokers all have. Number 1, expertise. Really a market expert at a thin enough slice of the market you can know everything about it, but big enough you can make a good living. Secondly, passion. You got to love it. It gets you through the tough times, and you'll be there for the good times that will inevitably return. And thirdly, you have to be able to use discipline well. Think about the fundamentals that Rod teaches. These are things that a lot of times they're not glamorous. They're not fun to do, right? But use the Stonecutter's Creed. Stonecutter's Creed is pound the rock. What does that mean? Stonecutter comes into the shop in the morning, sits in front of a big piece of stone, gets the mallet out, whacks the thing 99 times, nothing has happened. 100th one, boom, the rock splits in half. The casual observer in the back of the room says, oh, that 100th one was different. It must have been a different mallet, must have hit it harder, or it was a different angle. And the stonecutter knows, no, it was exactly the same as all the others, but it's the 99 that came before it that allowed that 100th one to work. In the same way, you have to have the discipline, provided you're doing things that are fundamentally the right things to do. You have to keep doing them. You have to have the discipline to do them. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. In my case, decade after decade. But you keep doing those things, eventually that is going to work for you. You have to have the discipline to do that. And think about this. Abraham Lincoln said, discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. So your hack to use discipline more effectively, think about that. Are you going to do what you want now or what you want most? And think about what your goals and objectives are. Write them down, put them in a place you can look at them every day. And when you're feeling a little tired, I'm going to go grab a beer with the guys, or I'm going to go watch some TV. Look at that objective and say, is that going to help me get there, or is it not? And like Rod said, to be successful in this business, you only have to work half a day. Doesn't matter what 12 hours you work, but you got to work 12 hours a day to make it happen.
Well, that's a BK saying. But yes, I've learned from the best. So, okay, BK, that was freaking awesome. Hey, besides all my books, right, my 5 books and one with you, what's your favorite book?
Look, I think if you go to bobknakal.com, I have a suggested reading list. But I will tell you, I love the Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy series of books, Who Not How, 10X, and The Gap and the Gain. Those are great. But I think my favorite book, if I had to read just one, is probably Good to Great. And Good to Great, Jim Collins.
Yep.
And the main thesis there is that the main difference between the good companies and the great companies, or I'll say the good brokers and the great brokers, is that the great companies figure out the one thing that they think they can do or want to do better than anybody else in the world. And every single decision they make is geared towards achieving that objective. Whether they have Coke or ginger ale in the kitchen, they think about, is that going to help me get to the position I want to be in? And it guides every single decision they make all day long. That's really important. So think about, what do you want to do better in the world than anybody else? And think about whether the activities that you're doing are going to help get you there or not.
Yeah, and I'll show you folks. I read voraciously. I love so many books, and I love all of Hardy's books as well. But I got to tell you, I think with Bob's, if we go on Bob's theme of discipline, there's a book by Covey's son, Covey and Mackenzie, called The Four Disciplines of Execution. The Four Disciplines of Execution. And if you're struggling right now to figure out what do I need to do and what's the cadence and what leads to what, that book lays it out all for you. Lead measures, lag measures, how to measure, right? Because we do measure at Massimo. You have to measure. What doesn't get measured doesn't get done. It's just what happens. So The Four Disciplines of Execution is definitely one of my all-time favorite books. Okay, let's open it up to the questions. I'm gonna skip some questions. Those are things we're gonna talk about later in our sessions. And folks, I hate to ask you this, but can you retype your questions, because all the comments come on, and your question goes somewhere, and I can't get to it. Okay, Bob, when you negotiate a listing, exclusive listing, what period of term do you ask for on your listing, and what shortens the period? What's the shortest period you will accept?
Okay, well, the general term of our listings is 6 months, but starting 30 years ago, we give every single client the right to terminate the agreement on 30 days notice for any reason or no reason. If the client's not happy with what you're doing, you could have a 10-year agreement, doesn't mean anything. And I think I always say to clients, look, I'm going to give you the right to cancel it, because if you're not happy, it doesn't matter. And I will tell you, I'm so confident that you're going to be happy with the job we do for you. I'm willing to give you that cancellation provision. And I will tell you that the number of times that owners have exercised that cancellation provision is, maybe 1 or 2 a year out of 50, 60, 70 agreements a year that we're signing.
And I will share with you, let everyone understand this. The standard exclusive listing agreement tends to be between 6 and 12 months. 6 and 12 months. If you come in, and you can do this either with the guarantee that Bob talked about, or as we will get to in the next few months, you will all be using AI to facilitate shorter listing periods. You all will be. If you come in and you offer an owner a significantly shorter listing period, you can actually ask for a higher fee. Let me repeat that. If you can commit to a significantly shorter listing period, you should ask for a higher fee than your 6 month or your 12 month. Why? Because speed wins. People want to get things done now, not 6 months from now. What's going to happen to interest rates? What's going to happen to the market? What's going to happen to the wars? We don't know. I want the solution now. So if you can go for a shorter listings period, which with AI you can, ask for higher fees, you can command higher fees. Just understand that. Okay, BK, next question. In chapter 2, you talked about physical mailing. How do you do physical mailing now? Do you still do physical mailing?
Absolutely. Physical mailing, I think, I think the effectiveness of email has been greatly degraded because folks are getting so much email today, things get lost. I call clients and say, hey, I just emailed you this. More than half the time they say, oh, I didn't get it, or they didn't see it. And I think that the tendency is people get a little frustrated when their box gets full and they just hit delete, 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 maybe deleting your stuff. But if you do a good piece of hard mail, it will have more shelf life, printed on good quality stock, send it out. And, I think it's much more effective and better today. People are doing a lot less hard mail, so it's less likely to get lost in a whole stack of mail. So I think it's great. And what I've always said to people, if you look at the frequency of transacting, people in Manhattan, when they buy a property, they own it on an average of 38 and a half years. So they're not transacting all the time. So you have to remain top of mind for them. So when something happens, it's going to prompt them to want to sell, whether it's death, divorce, taxes, partnership dispute, what have you. The next thing you want them to do is think about you. I always said, with hard mail, as they pick up their mail, they look at it, they say, oh, Bob Knakal, blah, 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 throw it in the trash. If they do that, to me, that was success because they probably didn't need to transact at that time because they see a real estate person sending them something, they throw it out. But then next month, again, look at, oh, and Bob Knakal, boom, Bob Knakal, boom. They keep throwing it out. And then all of a sudden, oh, I have to sell my building. I better call Bob. That's what you want. You want to stay top of mind. Hard mail, I think, does a much more effective job of that than email does.
Okay, Bob, I need some rapid replies if you can, okay?
Yep.
How much time will you wait before calling an owner again after you talk to them?
I try to speak to everybody at least once a quarter.
Once a quarter. Awesome. At this point in your career, what are some of the proprietary tools that you use?
Using AI, but the number one priority always is making those prospecting calls. Number one revenue generating activity you can do is calling people.
By the way, it is. It's proving, folks. Number one source of income for commercial real estate brokers, I mean, measure the stuff, is the prospect call. Number two source of income is the inactive client call. Those are the top two sources. And the next, number three, is so far below. Those top two things you do will make all the difference. Larry, the reason that AI will create shorter exclusive listings is because I can dial 1,000 owners and 1,000 emails in one day now and talk to hundreds of owners within 1 week and get an answer for your property within 7 days easily now with AI. I can't. So that's why it will create shorter exclusive agreements. Do you email or text after talking to people, or you just call and that's it?
I do everything. I email, text, hard mail, call, try to meet with them, see them at networking events. You have to stay top of mind in all ways. Whenever I also leave a message, I think people tend not to listen to voice messages. So I will leave a voice message, but I immediately send a text as well. You should have cell numbers for everybody. Cell numbers are very sticky. People move around, they change companies, they change addresses, they change a lot of stuff. I still have the same cell phone number from 1987. So get the cell phone number, and then if you leave a message for somebody, you can text them.
Yep, absolutely. Look, prospecting is not just dialing anymore. Prospecting are campaigns immersed with text, emails, video LinkedIn messages, video DMs. Those all work. Those all work. BK, is it possible to be a specialist in multiple markets?
I think you probably could, but I think the more narrowly you focus, the easier it is to articulate that area of specialization. I think some people, by nature of being in markets that tend to be a little bit smaller, may have to do that. But I think you want to make your job as easy as possible to express to people what your area of specialization is.
Awesome. I'll ask this question first, and BKU, George asks, what about cold calling? George, we don't believe in cold calling. I don't believe in it. You should warm call. You should have a presence in amongst your prospects
Yeah,
beforehand.
theoretically, you should only be making cold calls for about 2 years.
Yeah.
And then if you should have a target database of people that for sales, it's 1,000 to 1,200 people. That should be your same target list for your entire career. And you should focus on trying to get relationships with every single one of those people. But after you've gone through that list for a couple of years, you've spoken to all these people already. If you've spoken to them and you know them, it's not a cold call, it's a warm call.
BK,
That's
do
why
you
I
have
call them prospecting calls, not cold calls.
last two questions? BK, do you have multiple avatars, personas you pursue, or because you just have one? How do you know that you're going after as efficiently as possible who you're going after, who you're prospecting?
Yeah, for the most part, there's one profile of people that I go after, and those are owners of development sites in the markets that we cover.
Awesome. 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 So, folks, look, this was Selling Buildings, Chapter 2. We got a lot more chapters to go. We'll do this every month. And then as we go forth close to the end of the year, we'll condense it to every couple of weeks. But the way you do it is you buy the book. The link is in the chat box. If any of you wanted to talk about growing your business and making simply more money, check us out at massimogroup.com. That's what we do. We work exclusively with brokers. And don't forget, BK and I will be doing something really special with some brokers around the world on November 19th. Mark it in your calendar, your entire day. Do not schedule anything. You want to be there on November 19th. BK, you are the GOAT of commercial real estate brokers. Thanks so much, my friend. You're the best.
Thanks, Rod, and thanks everybody out there. Go get them. Keep on going. Keep on growing.
Make
Go
me rich.
make calls. Make some money.
Go sell a building. Talk to you soon, all. Take care.